Hello, my name is Eric Beu, and for those who do not know me, I am Branch 458's Vice President. I have done edit book training a couple times, I think once at a state convention and I think another at a Stewards College or RAP session. But with management ramping up route count inspections under Chapter 2 of the M39 handbook, I wanted to put this training into a format that could be distributed more widely. And I hope that those of you who are listening, some of you, if not all of you, find it informative and utilize what I've put out here to keep your own edit books current and up to date. Our handbook, the M41 handbook, City Carriers Duties and Responsibilities, section 253.1, states that the edit book is an important document that is used by delivery services. Therefore, it is essential that we, the carriers, keep it up to date and accurate. We should update at least once a month because I know that's when AMS, or Address Management Services, I think is what AMS stands for, would like our edit books turned in at least once a month. When you are working on your edit book, you'll clock over to 7430, which is labeled Carrier Customer Support Activities. This is the same time clock function we use when putting up new case labels. When you are working on your edit book, any changes you make should be done in red ink. I know that was what AMS prefers, so that as they're going through your edit book, they can see whatever changes that you've made note of. Now, if you're like me, most of us have never received any edit book training. I myself received some training back when I was in Carrier Academy as a CCA over 10 years ago. But even then, my facilitators said that CCAs would be a while before they saw edit books. And myself, after I became career full-time regular, I bid to a carrier technician and therefore really had no responsibility for edit books. Although, as a steward and branch officer, union representative, I taught myself the training that I'm about to give so I could help not just the carriers on my string, but carriers that I represent, both at my station and throughout the branch, work on their edit books and keep them accurate and up to date. When you go through a route count inspection, management utilizes your edit book line of travel to follow you, and they make note of any vacancies or items of that nature. If your edit book is not up to date, it could negatively affect your route inspection. I'm going to take you through each of the columns that you'll find on your edit book pages. In addition, I will also point out the information in your edit book and how it translates to what shows up on your case labels. Let's begin. The very first column on the far left of the page says SEQ number sign, which means sequence number. This column will have a few items in it as you're reading it. **R, and then a number. This is the start of that particular row of your case. So **R1, row 1. **R2, row 2, and so on and so forth. If you see an L in this column, that just designates when it changes from one piece of equipment to another at your case. The last thing you'll see in this first column is that each line has a number, and that is the stop number for that particular address. The second column says primary address. This is the street number for the delivery point. Each point has its own line, even if the street number is the same. You'll see what I mean in the next few columns. The third column states complete street name. This is the proper street name and will include any such directionals like south, north, northeast, southwest, etc. The street name will only show up on the first address for that street Every address after that that is also on that same street will be blank until you change streets. Next column says SECYABBR, which stands for secondary abbreviation. This could be something as APT for apartments, STE for suite, unit, something of that nature. It will only have the designation, not the number or letter, just that designation. Because the following column, which says SECY unit number, stands for a secondary unit number. This is where we will see the number or the letter that goes with the secondary abbreviation. If the address does not have any secondary addresses, then these two columns will, of course, be blank. The sixth column we see is labeled DELV type, delivery type. In this column, there will be 4 designations: CBU for cluster box unit, OTH, this was used for park and loops, dismount, foot deliveries, curb, which is used to designate curbside or mounted deliveries, and CENT, which is used for centralized delivery, such as a mail room or something of the like. The next column, USG code, usage code, it also will only have 4 designations in there. R for residential, B for business, RC, which is residential combined with business, or BC, business combined with residential. And then that code will be on every line item itself as well. The next column we have, the no stat column, stands for no status. If there's anything in this column, it'll either be a C, which is for a new address that has not yet begun delivery, or a Y, which can be used for several reasons, such as, but not including, such as including but not limited to, no mail receptacle for that address. The customer at that address refuses delivery, and the other delivery method is unknown to us. Could be that the customer receives P.O. box delivery rather than delivery at that address. Could also designate when a business has taken over additional suites or units within their area. Could be a trailer park where there's a trailer pad for a trailer, but not an actual trailer. Now, this is not the same as vacancies, which we see in the next column, VACIND, vacancy indicator. If the address has been vacant for more than 90 days, then you would need to put a V in the column if there's not already one there. This would also apply to a building that is under renovation, but has no secondary addresses, as we discussed earlier. Now, if you happen to have a situation where a building is under renovation and has secondary addresses, you would place a V in the vacancy indicator column for the first address, and then every address after that for that same building would have a Y in the no stat column. I know it sounds a little confusing, but this is what helps keep your edit book up to date. The next column says L/F cell. This is the column that indicates the size of the letter flat cell, and it's measured in inches. If you happen to see the fraction 1/2, that just indicates that there's going to be 2 addresses for that one cell, either the address before or after that particular delivery point. It's also going to have the 1/2 fraction cell size, because you need two 1/2s to make a whole. We all learned that in math, right? If you have cluster boxes or centralized delivery, then the first address will have the cell size for that cluster box or centralized delivery. Again, it'll be a number in inches up to 10, and then each corresponding delivery address for that cluster box or centralized delivery will just have the number sign. If you have multiple cluster boxes in your line of travel, then you'll see The first address in this cluster box has a number. All the other addresses that are serviced at that cluster box have the number sign. The next cluster box, the first address, has a number for the cell size. All the addresses serviced by that cluster box then have the number sign in the L/F cell column. The next column says SI, stands for seasonal indicator. If you have something in this column, it'll either be a Y, which indicates that it has a seasonal delivery, or it could be an E for those addresses that are associated with university or college housing, dorm rooms, and the such. The next column says drop. This indicates the total number of families or businesses served at a particular drop. It's my understanding from the training that I was able to obtain from the Postal Service that this column is very rarely used by city carriers. It's primarily used by rural carriers. But an example would be we deliver mail to a front desk of a building with many businesses, and then they have their own separate mail room that they use to distribute the mail. This next column I feel comes in handy, and I've helped the carriers on my string use this through the years as a carrier technician. It's labeled NDD SMTWHFS. This means no delivery day, and then it has the 7 days of the week. The first S on the left is Sunday, M is Monday, T is Tuesday, W is Wednesday, H is Thursday, F is Friday, S is Saturday. The S on the right side of the column is for Saturday. If you have a delivery, like a business, that is closed and does not receive any mail on a particular day of the week, this is the column you would put that day of the week in there. For example, you have a business closed on Saturdays. There should be an S on the far right of the column. Now, you could put an S on the far left of the column for basically any address, but that would be redundant as we don't do mail delivery on Sundays for the most part, not counting Amazon delivery. The next column, CONG, stands for U.S. Congressional District for that address. Each page will have a number for the first address and nothing thereafter for that page unless your route crosses districts. This is just for U.S. Congressional District numbers. I found out what it is, CONG, and the number, but I was not able to find out why it's in our edit books. Next column, RLY number. This is used for relay numbers, and it will be a number in numerical order throughout your route. 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. Can be used for a variety of reasons. Again, including, but not necessarily limited to, the start of each split or loop, whatever you call it. Relay boxes. It could be used to show when you switch from business deliveries to residential, or vice versa. Switching from mounted, curbside, to park and loop, again, or vice versa. There really is no limit to the number of relays you can have in your route book, but I would suggest you don't become excessive with them. On the case label, each relay will show up as a red line with 2 red dots, and then a red number in parentheses. This number is the number of deliveries between that relay stop and the next relay number. For example, this might be helpful if you have a third bundle or advos of some sort. You would be able to count out how many you need for that relay and then place them within that cell while you're casing. Now, this would obviously apply to third bundles that don't have addresses, that just have something like postal customer, current resident, our friends, but not an address. Because then when you get to that bundle out on the street, you've already counted out the number of that third bundle you would need to deliver. If you're at a cluster box or centralized delivery, they're all right there as you're servicing the box. If you're on a park and loop, a split or loop, Those advos, that third bundle is at the back of your bundle of flats. And so as you're walking house to house or address to address, as you're getting the mail ready for the next delivery point, you can just reach to the back of the back of the bundle, and have one of those advos ready to go. I find it helpful when I'm doing a third bundle that isn't addressed to have them already counted out and within each cell. Next column, ADDR MKR, stands for address marker. This is primarily used for park points, and in the edit book is noted with the letter P. It's placed in this column at the first address at that park point. On the case labels, it'll show up as a green line with 2 green dots and can be found in conjunction with a relay point. If it's just the park point and not a relay number, you'll see green parentheses with a green number. Works the same way as the relay number. The next column we see says +4 column, +4 code column. This is nothing more than the zip +4 for that particular address. Each address will then have its +4 in this column. Next, we see additional info. This is used for extra identification for a particular delivery point. It shows up beneath the address on the case label. Could be something like the name of the business or school. Could be a range of apartment numbers like APT 1101 to 1250. It could say POB for someone who gets post office box delivery. Could say DSMNT for dismount. None of that will show up on the case label unless it's in your edit book. And it doesn't show up in the edit book by default. So even if you have a cluster box that services a certain number of apartments, it won't have that apartment range number unless somebody has added it in under the additional info column. I would caution, though, that putting too much information into the additional info column would then cause the font on your case label to be either too small to read or some of the info that you want just to be cut off when the case label is printed. Next, we see alternate zip/RTE. This only indicates if the address has more than one zip code or is serviced by more than one route. I know if it's got more than one zip code, it probably would not be in an edit book, but this is what this column is for. Now, as I mentioned earlier, any changes that you need to do in your edit book should be done in red ink. If you're deleting something, for example, a house that was vacant, has somebody move in, or I'm sorry, an address, not necessarily a house, an address is vacant and somebody moves in, you cross out the V with a red pen. If an address has been vacant for more than 90 days, you put that V in the vacancy indicator column. AMS is very hesitant to delete addresses, so try not to mark through complete addresses. Put a Y in the vacancy indicator column. A V in the vacancy indicator column, or a Y in the no status column. This will work to show that that is not an active delivery, as I said, AMS prefers not to delete addresses. If you need to add new addresses, you need to get them added as soon as possible. And when you add them, you'll put a C in the no status column. This would go if you have a building that adds additional suites, gets divided up into additional units, a housing addition that goes in and many new addresses are coming online. If you need a separate sheet of paper to add all the new addresses, that's fine too, and list them all. But make sure you list them in delivery order. And then you'll make sure you put on there where it goes. For example, if you've got a new housing addition coming in and you're going to start servicing that housing addition after stop 100, but before stop 101, then that's what you would say, that these new addresses need to be added between stops 100 and 101. Changing your line of travel. I know that's a big one. A lot of people want to change their line of travel. You can't do that through editing your edit book, changes in your edit book. That's done on an entirely separate sheet, separate form. If your management doesn't have that form, contact your steward, your local branch, your NBA's office. Someone will have the form that is used to change your line of travel. Side note, if you're getting any pushback from management on changing your line of travel, I know this isn't part of edit book, just that's why I said side note. If you're getting any pushback from management on changing your line of travel, just point out to them that you're doing this because you want to save time. That seems to be the magic word, saving time. Just a few more notes on what you may find on your case labels as you're reading them, for those that might want to know. If you see a double black line, that just indicates where there's a street change, and each street has a colored pattern on it. And that is the same colored pattern through the entire station. So even if you've got a long stretch of road, let's say Main Street is serviced by more than one route because of it's a long street, each route that services Main Street will have that same colored pattern at the bottom of the case label for Main Street. If you utilize your edit book, as you should, then there is no reason to mark up your case labels. I'm sure those of you who are listening to this have had those supervisors, managers, postmasters, whatnot, who have gotten on to us for marking up our case labels. But everything that you see carriers put on their case label is stuff that could be notated in the edit book and show up on the case label. I know people like to mark their splits, stuff of that nature. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just pointing out that if you've got that anal retentive supervisor who wants you to not mark up your case labels, using the information that I just provided, you'll be able to make sure all that information is on there so you don't have to mark them up. Your choice. Again, as I noted earlier, I hope you guys find this informative, and even if just one out there utilizes what I've taught to keep their edit books current and up to date, and during their next route count inspection keeps that examiner off their butt, then I've done my job. I would also point out that you don't necessarily have to be going through a route count inspection to use the information that I just gave to help keep your edit books up to date. In closing, I hope this was helpful for anybody and everybody, and stay safe out there.